If I thought the killing would stop here, I'd let him go.
Charles Bronson.
You can't stop it.
Lee Marvin. Death Hunt. Based on the true story of one of the greatest manhunts ever. And of two rivals who clash as enemies. But in the end, triumph. Death Hunt. Rated R. Starts tomorrow at a selected theater near you.
Charles Bronson is back as another Charles Bronson character enacting his revenge, who more than likely killed somebody he loved in cold blood. That sort of became his thing after a while. Only this time, that someone who's killed is a lovable dog that he rescued from its abusive owner. Meaning this movie is also part John Wick, so there's that awesome element to fuel your hatred for the enemy. And if that's not enough, there's the top billing cast that headlines Charles Bronson and Lee Marvin, two badass actors who were the grandfathers of the action movie badass. So they wrote the book on this shit, probably without even knowing it. And this is them at the tail end of their acting careers. I'll watch anything that stars Charles Bronson and Lee Marvin, like A Dirty Dozen, which also features Lee Marvin and Charles Bronson. And another quick fact, Charles Bronson and Lee Marvin both shared the same film debut acting credit in a movie called You're in the Navy Now. So destiny keeps bringing these two movie badasses together. And this is their final outing in the highly underrated 1981 awesome-ass film based very loosely on the true story of the 1930 manhunt for a man named Albert Johnson, a trapper who lived alone like a hermit in the Canadian wilderness. Then an incident with the Canadian Mounties that ended in the death of one of their own led to this massive manhunt across the Canadian wilderness to get this guy, which they eventually did, and it ended in his death, but was the first Canadian manhunt to make use of a plane to assist in the capture of a fugitive. However, this movie is not an accurate account of these events. They Hollywood the shit out of it, so don't view it as some sort of documentary. It's here to entertain and just have fun, and showcase Charles Bronson and Lee Marvin as cinema badasses. One last time before they get too old or too dead for this shit, and they're pretty close to that here. So this is it, folks, from Peter R. Hunt, the director of Her Majesty's Secret Service and Hyper Sapien, People from Another Star. It's Charles Bronson as a single badass who's pushed too far by society, again, and forced to become a one-man army against it, in Death Hunt. So it's the tail end of 1931, and it all starts off with Charles Bronson, who's playing this loner mountain man, hermit type, named Albert Johnson, just like the real guy. A trapper who lives in this awesome-ass cabin you just know he built on his own, even though they never actually say it, and it's in the middle of the Canadian wilderness. Now this is what I would be doing if I hadn't met my girlfriend. So he's just the type of dude who usually just lives his life and minds his own business when it comes into run-ins with town folk like these local idiots. Played perfectly by a cast of excellent character actors, from Ed Lauder to Maury Chaykin, and this guy, William Sanderson, and even Uncle Leo himself, Len Lesser. So right off the bat, these guys are all introduced as scumbags, since they are having an organized dogfight, which was still actually illegal in those parts in that time, at least according to the movie it was. So they are breaking the law by having dogfights in the first place. Plus, it's just a tasteless and cruel thing to do to animals, right? And Charles Bronson agrees. This sickens him so much that even he, a man trying to avoid run-ins with society, intervenes and puts a stop to this and rescues the dog from its evil owner, Ed Lauder, before it gets killed horrifically. He then forcibly buys the half-dead dog from Ed Lauder, picks up the creature, and just leaves this awful place. Only this little intervention doesn't sit well with these backwards-ass redneck inbreds, especially Ed Lauder. He's not gonna just let this go and simply get a new dog to abuse. Nope, he wants to get Charles Bronson for this and make his life a living hell. Cause why not? These dummies clearly have nothing better to do. And thank God too, because if he didn't, there wouldn't be any Death Hunt at all. And the credits could just roll now. But nope, cut to this small Canadian frontier town of mostly men trying to escape their wives or something. That includes a small Canadian Mountie station run by none other than legendary actor himself, Lee Marvin, who plays Sergeant Edgar Millen, the head Mountie, I guess. even though I never imagined Lee Marvin as a Canadian mountie. But here it is anyway. That's where we meet this guy, a rookie mountie fresh out of the academy, looking for Lee Marvin so he can report in for his first assignment, just like a police captain. Just as Ed Lauder busts in, demanding that Lee Marvin go and take care of that asshole Charles Bronson for beating him up and buying his half-dead dog off him, and ending their fun and exciting and illegal dogfight. Then cut to Charles Bronson as he arrives at this trading post, where this Grizzly Adams guy running the place sells him all the ammunition he has.
This store can't hold all the ammo you got on this here list.
No big surprise if you know Charles Bronson. Charles Bronson's always stocking up on ammo. Not just for trapping and hunting, but just in case society decides to fuck with him. Death hunt him through the Canadian wilderness. Or something. So we'll cut back to Lee Marvin the Mountie and his new guy and... hey, it's Apollo Creed. And Chubbs. Only in this, Carl Weathers is playing Lee Marvin's sidekick and buddy, Sundog. Or as we find out later, his given name,
George Washington Lincoln Brown.
But he's Apollo Creed and Chubbs to me. We'll cut back to Charles Bronson real quick as he nurses that dying dog back to health. Aw, Charles Bronson's an animal lover. I like that. Then cut back to Lee Marvin's new addition here, who doesn't seem to like Lee Marvin's laid back, don't give a shit ways of doing things. As Chubbs bangs this buffalo woman right in front of everybody, no shame at all. And is even nice enough to offer Junior Mountie here a piece of her buffalo ass.
You want a piece of this buffalo woman?
Which he turns down, of course. He don't want Carl Weathers' sloppy seconds. So cut back to Charles Bronson as we see his awesome ass cabin in the woods as he's living the dream. And now has a friend that he tries to build a bond with. For now anyway. Society don't like it when Charles Bronson finds happiness. So this won't last long, believe me. As we immediately see when we see Ed Lauder and his band of dipshits stalking Charles Bronson's cabin from the woods. Just looking to start shit already. Just let it go, guys. Or Charles Bronson will have to kill every one of you.
This is the dumbest thing I've ever done.
So then our comic relief duo of Maury Chaykin and his buddy wander up to the cabin, pretending to be in need of food and water and shelter. But Charles Bronson's no idiot, so he won't let them inside the cabin. But he's a nice guy too. So he offers them a little spot in the corner to go build a fire, and goes back inside to grab him some food and water. Because we all know that Maury Chaykin is a really fast cook.
I'm a fast cook, I guess.
That's when Ed Lauder and his buddies take this as their opportunity to start moving in closer to the cabin. And surround the place, when boom, a gun battle erupts. Bronson rifle butts this dummy in the face, as his new dog friend even gets in on the action, only to be shot dead by this asshole, when Charles Bronson immediately satisfies the audience by blowing his stupid fucking head off. Thank you, Charles Bronson. You have more than earned your paycheck already. Never been more happy to see someone get what they deserve. Bronson then retreats back into his cabin and takes refuge. That battle's over for now, and a dead dog. It's on now, you stupid sons of bitches. So cut to lovely actress Angie Dickinson. Yeah, she's in this movie for some reason. As I'm sure many have pointed out, her character serves no purpose in this movie. She's just there to have a female character and Angie Dickinson's star power. So they sort of wasted her here. She plays this lady who shows up in this testosterone-fueled town that her husband ran away to years ago or something and never stayed in contact with her. Not sure why. Angie Dickinson is an attractive woman. Police woman. Anyway, this husband of her recently died, and she's here to collect his belongings. Even though she doesn't seem to give a shit about this guy. She's more interested in banging Lee Marvin, where we do get a Lee Marvin nipple shot, so that's why she's here. So we have a reason to show Lee Marvin's nipple on screen. Then that night they all party and get wasted because apparently this is New Year's Eve and this is the last day of 1931. It's after this party that Angie Dickinson bangs Lee Marvin and we get our nipple shot. Yeah, it's Lee Marvin's, not Angie Dickinson's. To the disappointment of many men, and to the excitement of many gay men. Then Ed Lauder just busts into Lee Marvin's sex shack, all hot and bothered for sloppy seconds, and with the news that Charles Bronson killed some guy named Jimmy Tom. You know, that pile of human garbage that killed his beloved dog. So who gives a fuck about that guy, right? Well, Ed Lauder does apparently, and wants revenge. Now Lee Marvin's in no mood to deal with these idiots or the shitstorm that they're causing, but is the law and is forced to investigate.
Jimmy Tom is dead!
I told you I would take care of it.
So they all stroll on over and question that Grizzly Adams trading post guy on Charles Bronson and how he bought up all his ammo, like he was preparing for World War III or something. That's where we get to find out about this crazy local everyone's talking about known as the Mad Trapper. A mystery man famous for killing people then stealing their gold teeth for the value of the gold in their teeth. And some of these idiots actually think that Charles Bronson is this mad trapper guy, trying to justify more reasons to go hunt him down.
You think that this guy is him? Sure it's him. How else would he get all that money?
Lee Marvin knows that these idiots probably just started a fight with Charles Bronson and got what they asked for.
Were these magic grits? I mean, did you buy them from the same guy who sold Jack his beanstalk beans?
But still, once again, has to do his job as a mountie and go on up there and take this guy in. And that's exactly what he does too, and brings all these dummies with him. This posse of drunk idiots who started all this shit in the first place. Then cut to this guy, another trapper that Charles Bronson seems to know named Bill. He's nice enough to inform Charles Bronson though that Lee Marvin and all those jackasses are on their way up there to find him, and that Charles Bronson should get the hell out of there. Only Charles Bronson's not running. He's gonna stand his ground, of course, and protect his sweet ass cabin from turds like Ed Lauder and Larry, Daryl, and Daryl. Then we get a quick montage as Charles Bronson prepares for battle, digging holes and making pillboxes. Oh yeah, now it's about to get good. So Lee Marvin arrives with his posse and they slowly approach the cabin. Lee Marvin then announces himself and wants to come over and talk this thing out with Charles Bronson.
Johnson, this is Edgar Miller of the Royal Canadian Police talking to you. I don't want any trouble. I don't want to see nobody else get hurt. I'm coming in to talk to you.
Like civilized people. He thinks Charles Bronson's a rational guy who won't just shoot him dead like all these other mixed nuts.
Now hear me out.
That's when we get to see Charles Bronson's magic door that reveals Charles Bronson with a gun, of course. Sweet, that's what I came for. Care to try for door number 2, where we have a fully loaded Chuck Norris ready to go? Nah, Charles Bronson's enough. Lee Marvin tries his best to reason with Charles Bronson as he explains his part in this whole mess. He's just a mountie who has to bring him in. Just a regular guy doing his job and trying to avoid a gun battle. He even promises Charles Bronson that if he comes back with him to town all peaceful like, he'll have this whole thing all wrapped up and him back in his cabin lickety-split. Since Lee Marvin is more on Charles Bronson's side than he is these idiots, Lee Marvin guarantees his safety. It almost looks like it's gonna work too, when this idiot just decides to get himself killed. Closing the Charles Bronson door of opportunity forever. Blew that one. So Lee Marvin casually strolls back to this dumbass. Does what anyone would want to do to this dead idiot. And decides that their only choice now is to open fire on the cabin. They all shoot low too because Lee Marvin knows that Charles Bronson's a smart guy and is probably lying on the floor. And they want to kill him. And boy, do they unload in this place. We got everybody. Larry, Chaikin, Louder, Chubbs, Uncle Leo. The whole shebang, just unloading on Charles Bronson in his cabin. So after that fun, they decided to finally stop shooting and approach the cabin to see if they got Charles Bronson or not. Which of course they didn't, as the first idiot through the door is greeted to this awesomeness.
Welcome.
Beautiful. That's classic Charles Bronson. Didn't see that shit coming, as Uncle Leo is shot in the face but not killed. That is until Larry here decides to say fuck it. I never liked Uncle Leo anyway, and shoots him right in the back, for the hell of it. He gets his when he crawls away, right into a bear trap. Ouch! That's gonna hurt. But you had that coming, Larry. So wow, as the battle cools down, we get to see that there are corpses everywhere now, and Bronson has won this one. Then night falls, and Lee Marvin, Chubbs, and that junior mountie thaw out some dynamite since they've decided that the only way to end this is to blow the shit out of Charles Bronson's cabin with that very dynamite. So everybody waits it out for a while as the final assault in the Charles Bronson cabin is about to happen. We even get to hear Charles Bronson sing. He's not that great.
Low in life, I used to hold you, oh my darling Clementine.
So now things are really about to take off when Chubbs lights the fuse and blows the ever-living shit out of Charles Bronson's cabin and blows it to smithereens. Damn, well he's gotta be dead now, for sure, right? Of course not, it's Charles friggin' Bronson. He just materializes out of the darkness with double-fisted barrels of death that he unloads on everyone in sight. In the best scene of the whole friggin' movie as everyone runs for their lives. That's what I paid to see. So, cut to the next morning when we get to see the aftermath of this war zone. Boy, when Charles Bronson unleashes hell, he doesn't pussyfoot around, does he? So naturally, Charles Bronson's long gone at this point, into the mountains, and just as naturally, Lee Marvin is going right after him to uphold his king mountie duties, I guess.
Cap ain't no normal, man.
He's no normal man, alright. He's Charles friggin' Bronson, and he should have left him, his dog, and his cabin the hell alone. Too late now, though. So Angie Dickinson's pointlessness watches on as Lee Marvin prepares to go death hunt Charles Bronson. Why is she still here? Nowhere else to go, I guess, and just finds Lee Marvin's sexy form too irresistible, I guess. So the chase for Charles Bronson is on, with snow dogs and all. Charles Bronson sees this and starts snowshoeing his ass up the mountain, deep into the wild. As they get closer and closer to Charles Bronson, Lee Marvin then climbs a tree, and with a pair of binoculars spots Charles Bronson, who's doing the same damn thing as he is. They make eye contact and even exchange smiles. Kind of a nice moment between the two of them. I sense the characters have a certain respect for each other right here in this scene. As Bronson then just continues on his flight, so Lee Marvin and all the other dumbasses then make camp for the night, where Ed Lauder lets loose his homosexual side and makes out with the junior mountie, who's not taking his advances lightly, and beats him up so he can become a man finally. Happy 1932. Then enter Plain Guy, this arrogant, cocky douche, who seems to think he can catch and kill Charles Bronson just because he has a fancy-ass 1930s plane. It's right about that time that a $1,000 reward is offered for Charles Bronson's capture, getting every Joe public with a shotgun to go Charles Bronson hunting. Boy, this thing got huge fast, which pisses off grumpy Lee Marvin, who just hates this Plain Guy, who thinks that getting the whole friggin' world in on this manhunt was a good idea. I do like this answer that Lee Marvin gives Plain Guy when Plain Guy asks Lee Marvin where his headquarters are.
Where's headquarters?
Wherever I'm standing.
Who the hell needs a building, right? Lee Marvin don't need buildings. So that night, Charles Bronson stays safely tucked away, as Maury Chaykin and his buddy receive a visit from this old guy, Bill the Trapper, from earlier, who turns out to be none other than the Mad Trapper himself, when he kills these two idiots. And, yep, steals their gold teeth. Sorta his thing.
Gold is $35 an ounce.
So the next morning, Charles Bronson tries his hand at fishing, as these creatures disapprove of Plain Guy just flying wherever the hell he wants. So now the chase is back on again, and now with every dumb yokel in the area looking to get in on the action. But Charles Bronson keeps moving, and makes this crazy ass jump too. Whoa, touchdown! But pissed off Lee Marvin is just more irritated with all this bumbling competition that he has now. He believes that Charles Bronson deserves to be caught by him, not some dumb backwoods idiot. And you know what, I agree.
He deserves me.
So then cut to Plain Guy, spots Charles Bronson, takes a shot at him, and misses. Sends Charles Bronson rolling down this hill though. Dipshit tries for another pass, misses again. Then, just like in First Blood, Charles Bronson jumps off this cliff and grabs onto the nearby pine tree to evade capture, as Lee Marvin and company close in on him. Just in the nick of time, when that Plain Dick just comes flying in, guns a-blazing, at anything in sight, including Lee Marvin and company, where Chubbs is hit a bunch of times and killed. Yeah, of course, right? Chubbs, Apollo Creed, that guy from Predator, all eventually killed. And look, one of the bullets got him right in the arm. Carl Weathers has no luck with arms. So in retaliation to this nut, who's supposed to be on their team, Lee Marvin and that junior mountie open fire on that Plain Guy, causing that prick to crash and burn right into a mountainside. Good riddance. And even better, Charles Bronson shoots Ed Lauder, the dick who started all this shit. So now Chubbs is dead, and Lee Marvin has lost his only friend.
George Washington Lincoln Brown. Black bastard. On this one.
Lee Marvin then warns off all those other idiots.
Hold it! I'll shoot any man that tries to follow us!
Thinking they're gonna capture Charles Bronson, who's right back to running and jumping away. That's when Lee Marvin finally reveals that he's only going after Charles Bronson because it's his job, and that basically he's on Charles Bronson's side, not any of those morons.
Johnson didn't do anything I wouldn't do if I was in his boots. If I thought the killing would stop here, I'd let him go.
That's when Charles Bronson spots our crazy friend, the Mad Trapper, who Charles Bronson never really trusted in the first place, and tricks him into thinking that he killed him with a fake target he set up, wearing his clothes. Lee Marvin then hears this shot and moves in on Charles Bronson, only alone, while the junior mountie guy covers him with orders to shoot anything that moves.
Except me.
Of course, don't shoot Lee Marvin. That's when Lee Marvin spots what looks like Charles Bronson. He yells him down only to be shot at. The junior mountie fires, nicking the guy, as he keeps on running only to be gunned down by Lee Marvin. Well, that seemed a little easy and unepic. Once they get to the body, they see that he's been shot in the face, making him impossible to ID.
His face is blown off!
That's when Lee Marvin spots Charles Bronson. He even has a shot at him too and decides to let him go, as any sane person would at this point. And as you can see, Charles Bronson's wearing the Mad Trapper's clothes at this point, meaning that's who they really killed, as you may have already guessed. Even the junior mountie spots Charles Bronson as he disappears over the mountain. Now Lee Marvin is all about saying that the corpse of the Mad Trapper is actually that corpse of Charles Bronson, just to end this shit that he never wanted anything to do with in the first place, and just let Charles Bronson go.
As far as I'm concerned, that's Elbridge.
He then hands the whole mess over to the junior mountie to decide, who's more than willing to go right along with that whole bullshit story that Lee Marvin wants to do, just as the rest of the fortune hunters come wandering in.
Jesus, would you look at that? Teeth! Old villain! He's the goddamn Mad Trapper!
And so we watch as Charles Bronson wanders into a less snowy Canadian wilderness to build a new cabin, a dynamite-proof cabin with tunnels and watchtowers, so he can remain free and far away from society and build a new world for him and, well, just for him. Lee Marvin just sort of wanders off. Maybe Angie Dickinson's still waiting for him back in town. Maybe she's not, who knows? That's mostly satisfying, except for Chubbs getting killed again. And that's pretty much all, folks. That was the awesome and highly underrated Charles Bronson and Lee Marvin cat and mouse movie, Death Hunt, which leads me right into my final thoughts on this Charles Bronson gem, that once again cast him as this outcast, trying to live his life free from society's bullshit, only to be forced into it by a local trash with nothing better to do, like in Death Wish and some of its sequels. This was a theme with Charles Bronson characters, and I just love it. Now, some of the facts that I found in this film that were interesting were like that of the original going title for this movie. It was originally going to be called Arctic Rampage. Yeah, sounds a little corny to me. I'm kind of glad they changed it to Death Hunt. And some of the early casting choices I heard for Lee Marvin's character, first they were going to have Peter Falk, and then they wanted to give it to Telly Savalas, and then eventually it went to Lee Marvin. I think it worked out for the best. Then there's the whole true story behind this, which is far different from the actual facts. Again, this is not an accurate account of any of that. This was a Hollywood action movie all the way, loosely based on that Manhunt. If anything, this movie reminded me more of Rambo, First Blood, the first Rambo movie, and Cliffhanger, two Sylvester Stallone movies. Like if you took those two movies and squished them together, you'd have Death Hunt. That's what I feel. Well, that's all for now, folks. I love this movie and I find it real easy to watch, since I do love the cast and its story. They don't make actors quite like this anymore, cause they can't, and that's just life. So until next time, take care, and I'll see you at the movies.
I'm a fast cook, I guess.
Are we to believe that boiling water soaks into a grit faster in your kitchen than on any place on the face of the earth? Were these magic grits? I mean, did you buy them from the same guy who sold Jack his beanstalk beans?